My name's Gaynor. I own the school, and tonight we are doing the foods of Abruzzo. That's my best Italian accent. It's not very good, I must admit. So I hope you guys have everything you need and have everything, ideally everything measured out or at least close to hand, because then we'll be able to manage to get through everything. The order we're going to do things in, we are going to start with the cake and get that in the oven and get that cooking. And then we will just move through. We'll start the stew and do part of that, but not the final part where we put the fish in to cook it. And then we'll do the pasta. We'll move on and do the toast after that, and the tomato basil filling, etc., etc. I hope you managed to take a little look at the map of where the Abruzzo region is. It's right sort of, it separates northern and southern Italy really, and it's on the eastern coast. So it has a hilly area and a big coastal plain. And the coastal plain is where a lot of the fish dishes come from. And then in the mountainous area, there's a lot of sheep, so lamb and goats and things like that, and some chickens and stuff. So the cuisine is somewhat diverse. It's kind of geographically kind of split into two regions, but comes together politically as the Abruzzo region, and they have, some great dishes. And one thing I found, a nice interesting piece of information, they do this traditional panada celebration, which can be up to 30 different courses and can last all night. Sounds like a culinary dream to me. I don't know if I could eat 30 courses though. I don't know. We'll see. But so definitely sounds like a fun environment. Unfortunately, I've not been there, but I have a very good friend who's I knew in New York when I taught in New York, and she was from that area, and she was always going on about Abruzzo, this and that and the next thing. And this cake recipe is her recipe, actually, the chocolate amaretto cake. All right. So with the cake, you want to put your oven on, excuse me, to 350. And we're going to prepare our cake pan. You want about a 9, preferably 8.5, 9-inch cake pan. And this is a low rise cake. It's not going to rise a huge amount. What will help it rise a little bit will be the fact that we add the egg whites separately. We beat the egg whites separately and add those to the cake. But it is quite a low rise, probably like sort of thickish brownie almost, the cake itself. But we do want to line this, okay, with either parchment, or you can use wax paper. It really doesn't matter. Now, the best way to cut the paper the right size, there's two ways of doing it. You can either put it down like this, pop your plate on the top and draw a circle around it. But what I like to do, and I did this the other night with somebody, I did this cake a couple of weeks ago, and they got a bit confused, but I'm taking my piece of paper, my square of parchment paper, and I'm going to fold it in 4, and I make like a cone shape to get it. So I've got it sort of in 4 pieces like this, and then I'm going to make that into, going to bring the short side up to the long side and make a cone shape. And if this is confusing, you can do it the other way. And then what I do, I just put it on my cake pan, and I guesstimate the middle of the cake pan, and then take a pair of scissors and cut just inside there and try and cut it on a slight circle. But as I say, you can do it by just laying it on the paper. The idea is you want to make sure the paper doesn't come up the sides at all. It's better it's a little smaller. I intentionally made mine a little smaller than the pan, because if it comes up the side, it tends to stick into the cake. All right, and you don't want that. So to make this stick to your cake pan, you can just put a little bit of oil in the bottom, just to make it stick. A little bit of oil like that, and spread it around, and then you can just lay your paper on the top. And I'm going to put a little bit more. You can use butter or oil. I'm going to put a little bit more on the top here, and a bit at the sides. And I'm going to make sure I rub that all over so my cake doesn't stick. All right. So my cake will be in there and it'll come out nicely when we're ready to take it out once it's cooked, okay? I am going to grab a little bit of flour to put in there as well. I forgot to grab my extra flour, so let me just grab that in my bin. I have a 50-pound bin of flour that I keep in my kitchen at the moment. So a little bit of flour in there as well. In your cake pan like this, and then tap it around and get it to go up the sides as well, because the sides will tend to stick. Now, you don't want to leave all that extra flour in there. So either over your sink or over your garbage bin or whatever, is take it upside down and just give it a sharp tap so that the extra flour comes out like that, all right? Because you don't want all that extra flour in there, because it'll all stick to the cake. So that's ready for when we put our cake in. Now, our ingredients for this, we have our chocolate, our Amaretti cookies, which I've already broken. In fact, some of mine were broken in the bag, so I just crunched them up a little bit. I have my eggs. We're going to separate those. The amarettini and my confection sugar and my jelly are for the decoration on the top, so I'm going to put those to one side. And then I have my flour, my sugar, and my orange liqueur right here, okay? So what we want to do, we want to separate our eggs. Now we're going to use three egg whites, 4 egg yolks, okay? Now you want to be careful when you separate them to make sure that you don't get any yolks in your whites, because if you get yolks in the whites won't beat till stiff when we go to beat them up, all right? So I usually use like a 2-bowl method, so that I have yolks in one bowl, whites in the other, and I make sure that they don't mix together. So I don't like to use the shells to separate my whites. I'd rather use my hand, because your hand is softer and you're less likely to break your yolk. So I'm carefully broken the egg, and I'm separating by gently moving the yolk from one hand to the other. All right, so I've got my whites in here, and I'm going to put my 1 yolk in there, and then I'm going to do the same with my second egg. Oop. Got a bit of broken shell on there. My hand. Wipe it off. I cracked my shell a bit funny. So just gently, just like you would if you were doing it with a shell, just from one hand to the other. Now remember, we're only going to use 3 of the whites. So your 4th white, you need to put into another bowl, all right? Because we don't want the fourth white. So I'm going to break my 4th one into another bowl. And just so you know, you can freeze egg whites and use them again in the future. They work really well as long as you freeze them and just defrost them. They're great. And it's kind of nice to have extra egg whites in your freezer sometimes, because sometimes the recipe will say 4 egg whites and no yolks, and you've got all these yolks left. So having them in the freezer, you can just defrost them. You can actually defrost them partially, take one out. Now, how do you know what 1 egg white is? You're going to ask me if I take it out of the freezer. Well, with a standard egg, 1 standard large egg is 3 tablespoons of filling, 2 tablespoons of white, and 1 tablespoon of yolk. So if you freeze, I freeze this 1 egg white, and I've got some other egg whites in my freezer. I'm going to add it to it. When I defrost it, I just, per egg white that I need, I take out 2 tablespoons of white. It's kind of important to know that if you're going to freeze them, a number of them together. All right. So 1 egg white, standard egg white, 2 tablespoons if you freeze them. So we are going to chop up our amaretti and our chocolate. I've got to put it down here. And you want to do this either in a food processor or a blender. Whatever you have works fine, all right? So this is our amaretti, not our little amarettini that we're going to do. We have our chocolate here. Oh, it would help if I actually put the blade in. What do I do with my blade? I have to find the blade to the thing. Won't work without the blade in. There it is. I popped it in the dishwasher earlier on. I used it earlier. And I didn't take it out. There we go. There we go. So that is my my chocolate. I'm using semi-sweet chocolate chips. You can use good Belgian chocolate too. These are pretty good, but when we're beating them up, it's just easier to do it with the chocolate chips and the big lumps of chocolate. So the amaretti are going in with the chocolate, and we're going to put the lid on, and we're going to pulse these so they look like breadcrumbs. Okay, come on. If I can get my darn thing to do it. What's going on here? All right. I don't know why I think what it was, I put my blade in after I put the chocolate in. I think some of the chocolate chips got stuck underneath. Yes, there they are. So we get those out and do it the proper way. There we go. There. That's better. It wasn't down far enough, so it wouldn't work. There we go. So finely ground, okay? Takes a few minutes to do this. You just want to make sure those chocolate chips are broken up into smallish pieces, okay? I think I'm good. Have a quick blast. So it should look like fine breadcrumbs, all right? It's just kind of grainy mixture. Okay. All right. Move this guy out the way. All right. So now you want a mixer. A hand mixer is fine, or a KitchenAid type mixer works really well as well. Whatever you have to mix this all together. So now what I've done, I've softened my butter a little bit. I found that the best way to soften my butter is not to put it on the regular thing in the microwave, but to put it on defrost and just put it in for like 20, 30 seconds, because then it softens it. Whereas if you put it on the regular heat, it starts to really melt, and you don't want that. But you do want it fairly soft, particularly when it's a cold evening or if your kitchen's cold. And my kitchen is pretty cold. So I like to get my butter sort of soft and pliable before I start. So I am going to open up my mixer here. Now, for this part, if you're using a KitchenAid type mixer, you want the flat paddle. If you've just got a hand mixer, then use the attachment it comes with. But if you're using this on a mixer, you want to use what we call the paddle. All right. So I'm putting that on. 2/3 of a cup of butter, which is about 11.5 tablespoons of butter. So a stick and about 2.5 tablespoons as well. All right. And that is going to go into your mixer along with your sugar. How much sugar do I say? I've forgotten. 2/3 of a cup of sugar as well. All right. So 2/3 of a cup of sugar as well go into your mixer. Now, what we're going to do with this, we're going to cream these together, which means we're going to beat them together till they're nice and smooth and look creamy. And then we will add our egg whites, our egg yolks, a little bit at a time. One egg yolk at a time, mix it until it's fully mixed in. And the next one, mix it until it's fully mixed in. And then add, and then beat it for about 4 minutes. All right, so it's nice and well blended and fluffy. So I'm going to start it fairly slow. Turn up a little bit now. I'm going to put this on the overhead so you guys can see. Once it's fairly combined together, then turn it up a little bit. And it should be nice and creamy. I hope you can see that. Let me just put it up a second and you guys will be able to see. Let me pull this up and you can see how it's kind of stuck to the outside of the bowl. All right. So I'm going to put it on medium and I'm going to drop my egg yolks in one at a time. And let it mix in. Until it's all mixed in, and then you can put a second one in. And then the third one. And then my last egg. And then I'm going to let this mix together for about 4 minutes. This will incorporate some air into it. And then what we do, we're going to add the the Grand Marnier and the flour, the amaretti mix and the Grand Marnier. All right. And then what we'll do, we'll have to take this out of the bowl, unless you have 2 bowls, and clean it out well before we put the egg whites in. If it's not really clean, it won't. The egg whites won't beat till stiff. I'm just going to tip my chocolate mixture into a bowl. It will just make it a little easier to add. Make sure you get it all out. All the bits that stuck in the bottom. This incorporates some air into it, helps to make the egg yolk fluffier, make the end result turn out better. Now, when we add the flour and the amaretti and the chocolate, I like to add half and half. So half flour, half that mixture, half, some, I should say. You should see it getting paler in color as well as it beats. All right, almost there. Another minute. I've got my timer on over here, so. This also helps to keep the mixture fairly soft. It makes it easier to incorporate the flour. Keeps the butter moving. Okay, now that's 4 minutes. When you add your flour mixture, you want to keep the speed fairly low, otherwise it's all going to shoot up all over the place. So I'm putting about half of this 1/4 cup of flour in, letting it mix in till it disappears. And then I'm going to add some of the chocolate amaretti mixture, half of it, and let that mix in. Now you want to make sure this mixes in evenly, obviously. And then a bit more flour will ask for your flour. And then I'm going to slowly drizzle in the rest of the chocolate mixture and make sure I get it all out the bottom. Don't want to waste any. There we go. Now it's probably a good idea to stop your machine if you're using a mixer like this. To stop the bowl. And take your spatula and push down the sides, because the colder butter around the outside may not have mixed in. All right, like that. I'm going to put it on again. And then I'm going to add my 2 tablespoons of orange liqueur. Now you want a bowl to put this in. You want a big enough bowl that you can fold in the egg whites after we've beaten them. Okay. So I assume you probably have to wash your bowl too. So what I want you to do is to scrape this into another bowl, a biggish bowl. All right. Make sure you get it all in there. Now you've really got to wash your bowl and dry it very well, because egg whites are very, very finicky. They won't beat till stiff if there's anything else in the bowl, any residue from the butter, any water or anything else. So I'm going to go wash this, get this off here, and we're going to beat our egg whites with a whisk attachment if you're doing it in an electric mix, like a stand mixer. I could just lick all of this right now, but I'm not going to. All right, so I've got that in a separate bowl, and I'm just going to give my bowl a good wash. And then just as I say, make sure you dry it well afterwards. We don't want any butter residue in there or anything. We're probably going to need to use warm water. All right. So make sure you dry it well. Now, as I say, if you're using a stand mixer like this, you want to use the whisk attachment. If you're just using a hand one, then you're going to be using a whisk attachment. Anyway, no, so you want to put your 3 eggs, egg whites, I should say, into the bowl. And you're going to beat these until they're stiff. How do you know they're stiff? You could turn the bowl upside down over your head and the eggs won't fall out. I wouldn't advise you do that, but that's an indication that the egg whites are nice and stiff, okay? So you start it fairly slow and then turn it up a little bit. They'll go white and then they'll go soft peaks and then they'll go firm peaks. You can beat them too much. So you want to keep an eye on, don't sort of wander off and go and take a phone call or something else in between, because if they get too stiff, they look kind of dry and they won't fold in properly to the chocolate mixture. And once you get a bit of whiteness on there, you can turn your machine up to maximum and wait for them to go stiff. So you can probably see mine are starting to go white in there, but they're still very, very soft, okay? All right, they're not there yet, but I'm just going to show you where we are with them. All right, they are white, but they're not, they're still sliding around in my bowl. Can you see that? Because they're sliding around the bowl, that means they're not quite stiff enough. Basically, you should be able to tip that bowl and they shouldn't move, but they're getting there. All right, let's check and see. Okay, I can tell now. I don't know if you can see, but let me show you on this, on the beater. You see how the egg whites are completely firm. All right, so we know that's what we're looking for. And if I take the bowl off, they're not moving. Okay, so that means egg whites are stiffly beaten. So the next thing we have to do is very carefully fold these egg whites into here. All right, so let me just show you the action of folding before we start. So we're going to put a little bit of the egg white in, and we don't want to mix it like this. What I want you to do is to put the egg white in, then we're going to cut through it, and we're going to fold this up over it like this. And we're going to cut through it and fold it up over it without pressing down on it, all right? So I'm going to take a little bit of this, about a quarter of what's in here, dump it on the top of my cake mixture, and I'm going to cut in, and I'm folding over. and I'm cutting in and I'm folding over. And you can turn the bowl the other way as you're doing this. And you don't have to it all to disappear before you add a bit more, but in the end, you don't want to see any white. All right, so I've got it to that sort of stage. There's a bit of white left. I'm going to scrape off what's on my spatula, and I'm going to go back in and get another, about a quarter of it. Yeah, maybe a bit more. So I'm going to do the same thing, and it should get easier as it thins out a bit with the egg white. All right. So big, broad strokes, cut through the middle, flip it over, cut through the middle, flip it over. And make sure you get around the outside of the bowl as well. A bit more. And I'm going to do the same again. So this is what's adding the real height, what will raise the cake the most. Although, as I say, it is a fairly dense cake because of the chocolate and the amaretti. It's not just flour in there. This is why it's a fairly dense cake, because it's got those dense ingredients in it. All right, so I'm going to put the last bit in, get it all out, pop it in there. And I'm going to fold it in. Now, we do want to make sure we have no white bits in there now, okay? So big, bold strokes. So I'm really going down and around the bowl, through the middle and around. Through the middle and around. Got a stubborn bit there. Scrape all your stuff off and check that everything is mixed in. I think I am. If you see any white bits, you need to carry on doing it. But mine looks pretty uniform, okay? So now it's going to go into my cake pan. We don't cut this cake in half or anything. We just put the decoration on the top and serve it as it is. I say it's a low-rise cake. Woo! Nearly lost that bit. Scrape it all off your spatula and then gently level it off. Just push it out gently to the side of your pan. Pushing it out gently without patting it down too much, but making sure I get it out to the side and it's fairly even. And also what I want you to do, get it fairly even first. All right. And then what I want you to do is to make a little, I just need to flatten this out a wee bit more. It's a bit, not quite as risen on this side. I want you to make a little slight dip in the middle. All right. That will prevent it from rising up too much in the middle, which it tends to. And run your knife around the top. And get it fairly as even as you can. Now this is going to go in your oven for about 45 minutes. Okay, 350 oven, 45 minutes. I would suggest maybe you set your oven for 40 minutes and then check it. Middle of the oven. Always best to make it a little less time initially, and you can always add a little bit more afterwards if you need to. All right, go back to me. Take a look at my chopping board. Oops, hold on. There we go. Okay, so 40 minutes in the oven. All right. Probably the trickiest part of the evening is doing the cake. All right. So let's look at our lovely fish stew. I love fish stews from all over the place. I make lots of fish stews. with from different places, different ideas and everything. I think they're really great. Now this one, I don't know whether you guys bought shrimp already cleaned and cut. I actually did. Mine was already, I got some already cut into rounds and the tentacles all chopped up. So I don't need to do much to those. But if you bought the whole ones, you want to rinse them out. If you still got the quill inside, it's just like a quill that you used to write with, you want to pull that out, cut the bodies into, so I'm just going to bring mine out, into rings. All right. So I have mine like this. All right. So they're already cut into rings. They were already cut when I bought them. With your mussels and I have a mixture. I have some that are already out of the shells, and then I have some in their shells as well. All right. Now, when you buy shellfish, mussels, clams, oysters, you really got to keep them. Oh, this little guy was eating the bag. You've really got to, you should buy them, use them the day you buy them or the next day, because they're very perishable. When you get them home, put them in ice water, which is what I did with these. They came in a little mesh bag. Finally, Giant Eagle put them in mesh bags, not plastic bags, thank goodness, because the poor little things would die in a plastic bag. But keep them covered with ice water until you're going to use them, and use them with ideally within 24 to 36 hours. Okay, so I say I have some of these, and then I actually had a few of these in the freezer. These are clams and mussels that are out of their shells, so I'm going to use those as well. I have my shrimp here, and then I have my fish, my whitefish. Now my whitefish, I have some haddock, and I do have skin on that, so I am going to take the skin off it. So if you have skin on your fish, you do want to remove it, because you don't want to put skin in the soup. So I'll just show you this. Oh, actually, this is coming right off. Oh, good. Sometimes it doesn't tear right off, but as these are smallish pieces, I cut it in pieces, it should come off. If you're, I'll just show you with this tail piece. It's kind of, this is the way that you skin fish. Imagine this is a whole fish. You take the tail end, you take your knife and just cut it into the flesh. And then you hold your knife. I'm holding my knife at about a 45-degree angle, and I'm holding onto that tail skin, and I'm pushing my knife against the chopping board at a 45-degree angle, and the skin will come off into in one piece, ideally. All right. But if you've got it already skinned, that's fine. That works just as well. And, you know, to be quite honest, you can use, if you don't like mussels, you don't use mussels. If you don't like shrimp, don't use shrimp. If you don't, you know, use the whitefish you like. I think with all seafood, this traditionally is with these ingredients, but it could be any fish. I like salmon in my fish stews as well. I think they're great. I like mussels. I personally am not a huge fan of clams. I'm going to use them tonight, but they're not my favorite thing. So with your whitefish, you also want to cut this into little chunks, all right? Nothing, kind of 1-inch chunks, all right? And I know we're doing a relatively small amount tonight. This seems like a very small amount of fish stew to be doing, but that's sort of a little bit of everything. The worst thing with a fish soup is to overcook your fish, all right? So I have my mussels, I have to say some in the shells, a few extra ones I had there. I have my trimmed calamari, my squid. Now, these are the tail pieces. If you prefer not to use them, that's fine, but they do add a lot of good flavor, and you can cut those into pieces as well. And then I have my shrimp here as well. Excuse me. So our fish is hopefully all prepared. The other ingredients we have: fresh basil, olive oil, sugar, fish stock or clam juice, tomatoes, garlic, tomato paste, a little bit of hot pepper, some oregano, some wine, and some oil. And then I have parsley in my thing here, and I have basil right here. So let's just look at the recipe as to what we're going to do. So we are going to take this recipe up to number 5, which is the first one on the second page of paper. So we're going to, as I say, we've pretty much got all our fish prepared, I hope. If not, I'll give you time to do that. Now, with the shrimp, I'm going to dry the shrimp, sprinkle them with some pepper and a little bit of salt, and whatever pan you're going to cook this in. I mean, you're not going to need a huge big. I'm using about 3-quart pot. All right, you just need enough to get everything in there, and that should be big enough. So I'm going to put a little bit of oil in here, and I'm going to sear my shrimp real quick. Now you want the oil to be hot. Sear them just so they get a tiny bit of color, and then take them out. All right, because we don't want to overcook them. And then we're just going to put them in a bowl. Then to this, we're going to add our garlic, our chili flakes, and our oregano. And we're going to stir those till they're golden brown. And then we add wine and bring it to a boil, and then we add the clams. But what I do want to start off doing, let's get our garlic chopped. All right. You want to mince up your garlic. Let me just wipe this from my shrimp here, or my fish. So I have 2 small cloves here, so I'm going to use both of them. Now, if you have them and they're in the skins, best way to de-skin them, put a knife on top, give them a sharp tap like that, and then the skins should crack and you should be able to get them off. Occasionally they stick and they won't come off, but usually the outsides will come off when you do that. And you can add a bit more garlic if you want to. I'm a big garlic fan, so things can really never be too garlicky for me. All right, so now when we mince our garlic, all right, you do not need a garlic press. Totally unnecessary. Much easier just to mince it up with a knife. So when you mince, flat of your hand on the front of your knife, the back part of your knife rotates over whatever you're mincing. Now, if you're doing a lot of garlic, I'm not going to worry now, but if you're doing a lot of garlic and it's sticking to your knife, then you can put a bit of salt with it. That will help to prevent it sticking to your knife a bit. Nice and small, because you don't want lumps of garlic. Nobody wants to bite on a whole chunk of garlic. Oh, big, a little jumping away from me. This is, it doesn't want to chop. There we go. Okay. Now we might as well chop our parsley and our basil at this point. So we're going to use, we've got about 1.5 teaspoons of parsley that goes into the dish, and then we're going to do another teaspoon. This is 1 fresh parsley, should be 1 teaspoon. Another teaspoon of parsley that is going to go on our toast as well. So let's do both together. So let's do about 2.5 teaspoons of fresh parsley. I'm going to move this right here for a minute. Now, with your parsley, you want to make sure that your parsley is clean. If you haven't washed it, I did wash this, but if you haven't washed it, you should wash it and dry it well, all right, with paper towel, because if it's not dry, it makes it very hard to chop up. Now, it's hard to know how much you've got, but you can always do a bit extra, it doesn't matter. I'm going to pull a little bit more out to make sure I've got plenty. There we go. I keep my parsley like this, because you may wonder why I've got it in a vase of flowers. If you keep it in like a glass jar or even a small vase and put a plastic bag over the top of it, it keeps. I've had this for at least a week, and the water keeps it fresh, and the loose bag over the top stops it drying out on top, but it doesn't get wet. So it's not lying in its own juices and getting wet. Okay. All right. So there is my parsley, and I'm going to chop this up the same way. I've probably got more here than I need. And you just take off the main stems, and then I start off by chopping it roughly like that, and then mince it the same way that I did with the garlic. And you can just put this in a separate little bowl or something and just have it ready for when we need it a bit later. Make sure you cut it nice and small. You don't want big leaves of parsley in there. But just rocking your hand backwards and forwards like that, like a little machine, will chop it up. I'm going to pop it in one of these little bowls I used earlier with the flour in. Why not? So I'm going to pop it in here, and then I've got that ready for when I need it. And then we need a little bit of basil. So we need about the same, about 1.5 teaspoons of basil. I need to dry this a bit more because I did wash this, but it's not very dry. There we go. Again, about 1.5 teaspoons of basil. And roughly chop it first and then mince it up. Always good to do all your prep ahead of time because you don't want to be doing this while your shrimp are cooking because you're going to overcook your shrimp. If you get it all ready ahead of time, you'll make a better job of cooking the final dish. All right, so there is my basil. I'll find a little bowl to put that one in. Reusing my bowls here. All right, that might be a bit more than 1.5 teaspoons, but it really doesn't matter. It's basil. You know, if it's a bit more, it doesn't matter at all. Okay, all right, so let's just go over this again. So what we're going to do, we are going to sear the shrimp in our oil. So you can put your oil on. You should have about 1.5 tablespoons of oil. Whoops. There we go, 1.5 tablespoons of oil. And then shrimp, I'm going to drain these. There's a bit of water in them still. And I'm going to dry them a bit because we're going to put them in the hot oil. So I don't want to put them in hot oil wet. And then I'm going to sprinkle with a little bit of salt and pepper. Not too much, just a bit to season them. Now, these are literally going to go in this really hot fat for sort of 15 seconds, 20 seconds at the most. All right. So once that, we've got to get the oil gets nice and hot. So once that heats up, we're going to put those in, and then we're going to take them out and put them in a bowl. You can maybe give you a bowl of wash you just used. You don't want to, you want to make sure it's clean. And then we're going to add our garlic, our oregano and oregano and hot pepper flakes. You don't have to put hot pepper flakes in if you don't want to. And we're going to cook that for about 30 seconds. And then we're going to add the wine, bring it to a boil, add the clams and cook just till they're open. And you want to cover this when you cook your clams. They shouldn't take very long to open. All right, lid, yes. The indication if a shellfish is dead is that either it opens on its own before you cook it, or it doesn't open when you cook it. I know it's very contradictory, but it's true. If they open up and they won't reclose. Like if you take a mussel and it's partially open, if you tap it and it goes and closes, it's alive. If you tap it and it stays open, it's dead. You put them in to a hot pan. If they don't open, like you see at the bottom there, I've got discarding the open ones after about 8 minutes. Hopefully they'll all open because they're fresh. I only got them yesterday afternoon. And the same when we do the mussels. All right, they want to open. If they don't open, chuck them away because being sick from shellfish is not fun. So make sure your oil is nice and hot. Get yourself a slotted spoon to get these babies out as soon as they get a little bit of color on them. All right. So pop them in, stir them around. Ooh, that's myself. All right, that's good. I'm going to take them out and I'm putting them back in my bowl. We do not want to overcook them. All right. Turn your heat down a little bit. All right, now. So they've got a little bit of color on them. Can you see that? Hopefully, a little tiny bit of color. So I am now going to add that garlic and the oregano and the hot pepper flakes. And you want to let the garlic cook till it just gets a bit of color. We don't want it to burn, but it should give off a nice aroma and it should just start to color slightly. All right, which again will take about 20 to 30 seconds. That's all. And then we're going to add our wine. All right, I'm getting a bit of color on this already. All right, a little bit of color on them. So I'm going to put in my, what is it, quarter cup of wine. And then put your clams in if you have some in shells. If you don't have any in shells, then don't put them in. And put a lid on because you don't want that all to evaporate. All right, now, so I've just put the ones in that I have in the shells, not the ones that are out of the shells, okay? And keep your heat medium low, and they should open up in a few minutes. When they've opened, we are going to take them out, and then we're going to do the same with the mussels. All right, we're going to pop those in and cook those till they open, and they can go in a bowl with the shrimp or a separate bowl. So basically, we've done this with the shrimp, but we've not fully cooked them. So what we're going to do is do this with the rest of the shellfish, and then we're going to add our broth and our tomatoes and our sugar and a teaspoon of salt, and simmer uncovered for about 15 minutes over a very low heat. All right, so we're just going to take this just to that point because we're going to add the fish at the end to cook properly. All right, so keep an eye on those guys. As I say, hopefully mine will open. Not yet, but hopefully they will. And I'm going to move some of this stuff back onto this tray. Now I have concentrated fish broth in here, so I'm going to add some water to it because I make my own fish broth, but the clam juice works just as well because not many people have fish stock at home. I often do, but that's just me. All right, so that is my olive oil for that. And yes, my fish. Put those back over there as well, out of the way. You notice we didn't cook the squid because the squid cooks really quickly at the end, so we didn't want to cook that. I did realize I have one thing missing on here. I say add the tomatoes. It should say add the tomatoes, the juice, and the tomato paste, the sugar and the salt. All right, and tomato paste needs to go in as well. Come on, guys. While you're waiting for those to open, never let you rest for a minute, we can cut some bread. I made a French loaf just now, but let's cut some bread ready for not only for these, the toast for these, but also for our appetizer as well. All right, so I would say that you maybe want to do 4 or 6 slices for this, and maybe, depending on how big your bread is, maybe 4, 6, or 8 if it's small slices for the bruschetta as well. It's up to you. I say 6 to 8 slices. My bread is pretty thick, so I might only do 4 or 5 of these into slices. So I'm just going to cut it. I'm going to cut the end piece off, and then you want to cut your slices about 1/2 inch thick, all right, for both of these things. And we're going to toast these shortly. So we can cut these, put them on a cookie sheet, and we'll deal with those in a minute. Yeah, so I've done 8 in total, but you can do more if you want to. My dog's sitting here and she's choking away here. What's the matter with her? So just lie them on a cookie sheet ready, and we'll come back to those in a little bit. All right. Come on, clammies. Are you opening yet? Yes, mine are all open. Took my eye off them for 1 second. Shouldn't have done that, but that's okay. So they've opened like this. So I'm going to put these guys in a bowl. Leave the shells because they look really pretty to serve them with the shells. So now I'm going to put this back on, and I'm going to add my mussels and do the same thing. Now the mussels will take less time. Mussels are usually open 1 to 2 minutes. If they're small, maybe only a minute. Mine are quite small. So I'm going to assume they're going to open pretty quickly. All right. If you cook them any longer, they're rubbery. You don't want them rubbery. Oh dear, I've got a piece of bread here. I might just have to eat it. Homemade bread. I love making bread. I make bread all the time. I've been making bread all through COVID. So I've had time. Also, if you see one of these open, take it out. All right. I sometimes use a pair of tongs to get them out. Yep, mine are open. See how quick that was? Right, 1, 2, we've got 4 of these. Okay, so these are going to sit to one side with the other stuff. Okay, so to this, we are going to add our tomatoes and their juice. All right. Our broth. A little bit of sugar. Sugar in Italian dishes. Often when I make my sauce, I often put sugar in because I think it needs it. Because sometimes the tomatoes are sharp, they need sugar. About a tablespoon of tomato paste and about a teaspoon of salt and a little bit of pepper. And I think that's everything. Let's see. Yes. All right. So bring this up to a boil. Then turn it down to a simmer, a low simmer, okay? Because we want this to cook, but not evaporate too much. Now, I know I say uncovered, but because we're making a relatively small amount, what I'm going to strongly suggest you do is partially cover. So put your lid partially on, partially off. Because when you've got a small amount, sometimes you get a bit too much evaporation. All right, but do bring it to a boil first, and then we'll turn it down to a simmer. Snacky on my bread. Yum, yum. Okay, I'm going to gentle boil. I'm going to put it to the back of my stove here and turn it down to a low simmer. And as I say, partially cover it. I can always boil it off a little bit more afterwards if I need to. Okay. All right, let's move on. Everybody okay? We all right? Thumbs up. Okay, so we're going to do the first part of the pasta dish, i.e. prepping the asparagus. All right, you're going to want to rinse your food processor bowl or your blender bowl for this. Passing out the way. So basically what we're doing with the asparagus is we're going to cook it and puree it, all right? And that is kind of like our sauce. So the penne we'll do, or whatever pasta you're using a bit later, but we're going to chop up some onion, cook that until it's softened, and then we're going to add the asparagus and cook it till it's softened, seasoned with salt and pepper. We're going to take out a few pieces and put them to one side, and the rest of it is going to get pureed either in your blender or your food processor. And we're going to do it just to that stage, all right? So that we have that part ready for when we're ready to actually cook our pasta, and we'll reheat this sauce part at that point, okay? So, onion. Just stick this here. So with about a cup of asparagus, I've probably got a bit too much here. Actually, I'm going to take a couple of these out, I think. So I'm only making it for two of us. So with your asparagus, cut off the white part at the end, the woody bit like that, and then cut these in kind of half, 3/4 of an inch pieces, all right? You want about a cup, doesn't have to be exact, okay? And then with our onion, we're going to use half a medium onion. So I'm going to show you how to, best way to cut an onion, if you don't already know. With onions, it's very important that you cut onions evenly so that they cook evenly. All right. If you cut big chunks and little chunks, it's going to cut uneven and you're going to end up with some overcooked, burnt, some undercooked. All right. So if you do them and cut them even, so I'm trying to turn my thing back on. My mouse tends to go to sleep. Where are we? Come on, here we go. You want to cut them evenly. So here is, I just wanted to get it over there. Okay. So you take your onion, you cut it from stem to root this way, like that. Cut off the stem end, not the root end, the stem end. Cut across it, pull off the brown stuff. All right. Easy so far, huh? Whoop. Now, this is the good bit. All right. So this is my stem right here. My left hand is right here. Move it over here a bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a series of cuts all around my onion like this. So what I'm doing, I'm putting my knife in about 1/4 inch from that root. I'm not cutting the root, but I've got the point of the knife in right there. And I'm going to stick it down till it hits the chopping board. And then I'm going to bring my knife forward. And then I'm going to go right next to it about 1/4 inch apart. And I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to do this all around the onion, following the contour of the onion this way, not up and down like this, because you'll have thick pieces on the side. You want to go round, following the shape of the onion as much as you can. All right, and then do the same on the other side. Hold it together with your fingers, okay? See, I'm following it around. Now, I've cut down all the way through it, so my onion now is separated, but it's still attached to that end, all right? So then I can take my bigger knife, and then I can just cut my slices, even size slices this way as much as possible, and then your pieces will be pretty much even sizes, okay? And you can come and chop the end bits as well, so that all your onion is pretty much chopped up the same, okay? All right, so I'm going to heat my oil in a skillet, just a little skillet like this. I've just got a regular skillet. I'll turn this around so you guys can watch. There we go. So I'm heating my oil in here, and I'm going to cook my onions in there. All right. Again, make sure you get your oil fairly hot, not really hot, but medium hot, okay? And then we're going to add the onions to it and cook until they're soft. Okay, I'm going to put my onions in. Cook them at a fairly gentle heat, won't get them soft, and then I'm going to put the all the asparagus in as well. Oh, got more oil there. Now your little bit of saffron, if you manage to get soft saffron, you want to put that in some warm water. It can be tap heat water. Just get it nice and hot. Force it hot. This will soften it up so that when we add it, just a couple of tablespoons should be fine. It'll start to color in there, okay? So they're starting to soften up already. They're getting there. They'll go sort of slightly translucent, and then you know that they're fairly soft. And I do apologize. I realized in this recipe I said use 6 liters of water. You don't need 6 liters of water. Not that you make it about 3 times as much. You just need probably half a large pot of water. All right, so my onions are looking fairly soft. So now I'm going to add my asparagus. And cook that until the asparagus is really nice and soft, because we want to puree this, okay? Sorry, I've got my food processor in the way. Let me move it out of the way a bit. There we go. And then in a minute, when we've done this, we're going to move on to the breads. And you can, I mean, you'll see the ones for the soup, we're going to toast, and then we're going to rub with garlic, a bit of olive oil, and sprinkle with parsley. The other ones, we're going to toast as well, and then rub with garlic, and then and a little bit, you can put olive oil on them all. You can do olive oil on all of them, actually, it's fine. We'll do that in a second. Never have too much olive oil, right? That is my cake. I'm going to test it. When you test your cake, you want to use like a skewer or a small sharp knife and stick it in. It should come out clean. As I say, remember, I only put mine on for 40 minutes so that I could check it and see. Yes, it's done. Because I have a 9.5-inch cake pan here, so it's cooked pretty quickly. I'll show you under here. Skewer comes out clean. All right, I'm going to let that sit for a couple of minutes, and then I will unmold it. Yeah, make sure this is nice and soft, all right? So if you're all right with doing double whammy here, let's toast our bread slices just under your broiler. All right. And we're going to toast them on both sides. So just keep an eye on them. You can even do them in your toaster if you want to. It's up to you. Sometimes it's easier to do them on a pan and get them all done, you know, together. But right, so make sure you're now. Mine's still not soft yet. And then we're going to do that parsley, some of the parsley we used. We're going to sprinkle on some of our toast. You can put it on all of them if you want to. It doesn't matter. Maybe we'll just do it on the ones for the bread. So we're live TV, right? The phone goes. You're not sure if your asparagus is cooked, take a piece out. No, still got a little crunch to it. Takes longer than you think. The tips are probably nice and soft. My tips are nice and soft. We're getting there. The others are still a little crunch there. All right, I think I'm pretty good up. Okay, so I'm going to turn this off and then I'm going to put these into the food processor. I can get to the plug. There we go. Put the blade in this time. It usually works better when I've got the blade in. Get the chocolate off the blade would be a good idea. So we want to puree this in here. So I'm going to scrape it in. It's probably easier. The small amount I'm doing, probably a blender would work even better actually, but as I've got this out now, I'll use this. Now we can reheat this in a pan, or we can reheat in a small saucepan if you want. It's up to you. So I'm just going to put my lid on. Get off the top bit there. And I'm going to puree this. Ah, I didn't save any pieces. Never mind. If you if you remember, guys, to save some, I've got some extra asparagus there. I can actually just saute to, or I can just broil. I forgot to save pieces to go on the top. I'll put some in with the pasta maybe. So push it down. All right, turn your soup off now, guys, okay? Woo! Gonna burn my bread. I'm all right. Don't forget your toast. Oh, mine are just okay. There we go. Turn them over. There we go. So check and make sure it's nicely pureed. A bit more. And again, because I've got a fairly small amount in here, I'm having to like push it back in to get it to puree a little bit more. Okay. So pretty finely pureed. Can you see that? Sorry. There we go. We'll do this the wrong way. Okay. I'm going to leave it in here for now. I will reheat it in a small pan or something before we need it. Okay. All right. So let's look. My toasts are done. All right. Beautifully toasted. Now, the trick is here. We are going to rub these. Again, you can put garlic. You can put garlic on all. Sorry, you can put oil on all of them if you want, or just on some. I am going to brush a little bit of oil on half of these. All right, just a little. Turn this one. A little bit of oil on half of them. All right, on 4 of them. And then I'm going to take my clove of garlic and then just cut it in half. And then rub it on all of them. All right. Now, the ones, you just check your recipe. The ones for the bruschetta, we're just going to sprinkle with a little bit of olive oil. A little bit of salt and pepper. All right, so those are the ones. Just going to put a little bit. I'm going to put oil on all of them. Oil on the rest of them as well. And then a little bit of salt and pepper on these. And then the other ones, I'm going to put a little bit of parsley on. All right. So this is just, you'll see on the recipe, it's just a bit, it doesn't matter. You can do them both the same. It really doesn't matter. All right. Like that. So they're ready for when we need those. These are going to be for the seafood. These are going to be for our bruschetta. Now, let's get our cake out because we do want it to cool. All right. So what I want you to do is to take a small knife. I'm going to rinse mine. I think I cut onion with this just now. Now, with your cake, take your knife, run it around the outside of the cake first, all around the outside, pushing against the edge of the cake pan. This will just make sure that it's not stuck to your cake pan. All right. And then take a cooling rack, put it on upside down, and turn your cake upside down, say a little prayer, and hopefully it will come out. All right. Just like that. Oh, got a tiny bit caught on that corner. And then very carefully peel your paper off. Don't rip it off because you may take some of the cake with it. You've got a little spot that wasn't well oiled or flowers. All right. Okay. Now, I'm going to turn this over. I'm actually going to grab my other. If you don't have two cooling racks, wait a few minutes till it cools, because sometimes it's hard to turn it over when it's still warm. Okay, so I have it right there like that. I'm going to let it get cool, and then we'll just decorate it very simply afterwards. All right. Okie doke, moving right along here. Okay, where are we? All right, so your saffron, you want to drain it and just add it to that, to your asparagus mixture, but all right, not very much, because as you've probably learned, that isn't why, but saffron is extremely expensive, the most expensive herb in the world, about $700-800 a pound, I think, something like that. I don't know the current market value, but I know it's very expensive because it has to be hand harvested, hand picked. Not that it's expensive to grow, it's expensive to harvest. All right, so I'm just leaving this in here for now to save on more pots, okay? All right, so we've done our asparagus as much as we can. We will cook the pasta in a little bit. Next, what have I got on my list next? Oh, I'll do my list now. We are going to now do, what have I got here? Oh, yes. We're going to make the tomato basil mixture to go on the bruschetta. All right. So I'm actually using some little tomatoes because they were really pretty. Doesn't matter. You could use two big ones. I've got about 8 or 9 little small ones that I got at Aldi's actually. So I'm going to chop those up. All right. So I think there's a typo on here. There's a few typos on here. So we want to cut the tomatoes into cubes, put them in a bowl, and we're going to combine with salt, pepper, and garlic and some basil. All right, so dead easy. So smallish cubes. So if you've got big tomatoes, you're going to be cutting them in more cubes than me. But you know, this is bruschetta is like a signature Italian appetizer when the tomatoes are good. The nice thing about these tomatoes, I'm sure they're very, yes, they taste very sweet. They're lovely, which the small tomatoes very often are. And these are all some of these are slightly different colors, which is really nice. I did sharpen this nice, but it doesn't feel terribly sharp. And to me, there's nothing better than garlic, tomatoes, and basil. Can't go wrong with that mixture, right? And the garlic we're going to mince up as well. And then a little more basil. So about half a cup, I think I say, but it depends on how many tomatoes you're doing. And they does need to be well seasoned. Salt is the friend of tomatoes, particularly when the tomatoes aren't great. Okay. Go one more. They smell really great, these tomatoes. They're wonderful. All right, so the seeds and all, everything in there, because it tastes really good. All right, so I think I say 2 cloves of garlic. I have one very large one there, so I think I might just use one. The other one was really for us to do on our bread, which we already did. So however much garlic you're using, we're going to mince it up the same. So cut it first, then mince it really fine. I am going to put a tiny bit of salt with this because I wanted some salt in here anyway. So that'll help me chop my garlic a little easier. It's my garlic in, and then some basil. About half a cup of basil, half a cup before you start chopping it up. But, you know, if you're a little short, don't worry about it. It doesn't have to be exact. I have some more over there, actually, but this will probably, with the amount of tomatoes I've got here, this is probably going to be good. You can also store basil the same way that I had that parsley, and I do that if I have some left over, because it does wilt very easily in those silly packets that they come in, those clamshell packets. All right. And oops, okay, so I've got it all. So about a tablespoon, I've got a bit more than that in here, so I'm going to put half of it in of this, and then season it with salt and pepper. So I was with my girlfriend yesterday. She said, "Oh, I never taste anything before I serve it." I went, "Oh my God, shame on you." If you're going to make it, you've got to taste it, make sure it tastes good. All right. So mix it up, see if you need more salt. Yes, definitely. And a tiny bit more oil. There we go. And I'm going to let that sit, and then I might come back to it and add a bit more seasoning in a minute, but oh, that's better. Salt is good when it's used in the right amounts to bring out the flavor. All right. Okay. So sit that to one side. Now you get my lovely face again. All right, so what else have we got to do? We've got a few things to do. It's not on my list. Here it is. Good job, I got a list. So what we want to do now is to cook our pasta, and then we'll finish our soup, and then we'll finish our cake. Because we'll finish the soup, just turn it off, and then we'll decorate the cake, and that will be the last thing we do. So with your pasta, I've got a cup and a half here. Large amount boiling salted water. All right, so I'm going to like 2/3 fill this with water. You always want to make sure you've got enough water to cover your pasta well by 2 or 3 inches so that it doesn't stick together. Now I've probably got about 1.25 quarts, so I'm going to put in about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. All right, and I'm going to bring this to a boil. Now, I suggest, rather than put it in the pan, I suggest you put your pureed, pureed asparagus in a small pot. You could heat this in the microwave too if you wanted to, but I'm going to pop it into a small pot and then I will reheat it. Remember, I've got the saffron in there as well. I'm just going to reheat this gently when the pasta is done. Get it all out of here. And then, as I say, when we finish our seafood dish, we're going to finish it and then we'll turn it down low. If you need to reheat it for you to eat it, reheat it very gently and for a very short period of time. All right. Don't heat it for a long time. So I'm going to sit that there ready to add my, I'll heat it up when I add my pasta. Okay. As I added all my asparagus to the puree, I'm going to blanch this in a little bit of boiling salted water to go on the top. I'm going to cook them, put the water on, cook them for a few minutes when it comes to a boil. A little bit of salt in there too. With your asparagus mixture too, give it a taste before you heat it. Season with a little bit of salt and pepper. I'll add a little bit of salt. I'm going to add a little bit of pepper in with it too. All right. And that's ready for me to heat that up. I'm going to grate a little bit of Parmesan cheese, ready for to serve with my stuff. Hold on, I'm just going to do a bit. Ooh, this is lovely. Smells great. Oh, perfect. Love Parmesan. I love fresh Parmesan when it's easy to grate like that. It's great. So that's going to go with our pasta. So I'm just going to put that in a little bowl. I'll find another little bowl somewhere. So this will just get served with the pasta. So you may just want to wait and do that when you actually serve your pasta. All right, let's wait and get our penne cooking. And then we will finish the fish, okay? So these are just my extra pieces of asparagus because I pureed it all. Go figure, huh? I don't want to waste any of my Parmesan cheese. Now the beauty with this cake, because the we're just going to sprinkle confectioners on it, is that it doesn't have to be cold to decorate it, because it's, you know, it's not like we're putting icing on it or something like that. All right. All right. While we are waiting, I'm going to retest my, yeah, they're good. And then basically, I'm just going to pile little mounds of tomato mixture. You could obviously put Parmesan cheese on here as well if you want to do. Onto my breads. Got a little plate to put them on. And I say I've just done 4 because mine are fairly big, but you can do as many as you wish. So these are the ones without the parsley on. We're going to distinguish one from the other. You want to pile it on. Don't make it look out pretty. It's meant to just be piled on the top. All right, I'm putting my little, these are my little asparagus pieces to, there we go. All right, my water is coming to a boil. I'm going to move. I don't think I need this again. Stick it over here. And then I'll just drain those and they can just go on the top when I'm ready to serve my pasta. So when we cook our pasta, 12 minutes, all right, at a rolling boil. I'm going to do it now. So pasta, of course, is served in Italy between appetizer and main course, typically. Very often not as a main course as we think of here most of the time. The watch pot never boils, of course. All right, I'm just going to drain my little pasta pieces out. They're wilted, they're good. No, wilted, they're soft, I should say. And I'm just keeping those to go on top of my pasta. And then we will just get back to our seafood and get that going once we get the pasta in. And we should be good. We started a few minutes early, so we're doing pretty good. Yeah, do make sure your water's at a rolling boil before you put the pasta in, all right? All right, I'm actually going to swap this over. I'm going to bring my fish pot to the front, push my pasta pot to the back. We're going to light something. There we go. And I'm going to throw my pasta in and put my timer on for 12 minutes. Cup and a half of pasta. All right, so back 12 minutes on that, back to our fish soup. So what we're going to do now, we're going to heat this up. Probably fairly hot, but you want to bring it to a simmer. And then first of all, we are going to add our white fish. So whatever white fish you use, I told you I have haddock. We're going to add that, cook it for a couple of minutes. It really won't take any longer than that. And then we're going to stir in the squid and the crustaceans of all the other, the mussels and the clams, and put those in and take it off the heat, let it rest, cover it for a minute, and then we add the basil and parsley and serve straight away. What I want you to do, I want you to turn it off and stir in the basil and parsley and turn it off, and then leave it until you're ready to eat it, but heat it very gently till it just simmers, all right? Because you don't want to overcook any of your fish, all right? It gets rubbery and chewy. That's not good. So let this come to a good simmer. You shouldn't have too much liquid in there. It's soupy, but it shouldn't be, really, really watery. One thing I miss about doing classes here, I don't have a dishwasher. A dishwashing person, I mean. All right, so I'm at a simmer here. So I'm going to put in my white fish. All right. And I'm going to let it cook for a couple of minutes. I have lost a little bit of liquid. I'm going to add, it just looks like it's reduced a bit. So I'm actually going to add about a half a cup of water to this. I can just see that it seems to have evaporated a fair amount. So I want to add a little bit more, which, you can add and you can just correct the seasoning if the water level looks a little low. All right. Your liquid level, I should say. It's a fairly open pan, so I think that's perhaps why that happened. All right, I'm going to find a bowl to put this in. Let's see. I'm going to dish mine up to show you, but if I were you, I'd leave yours in the pan and then you can just rewarm it when we're finished and you won't have to fiddle around with it, okay? I always like to present everything at the end so we can all see what we've made and everything, and I think it's nice to do that. And I can reheat it afterwards, that's no problem. All right, so I think my white fish has been in a couple of minutes, so I'm going to throw all my other fish in with any juices that are in the bottom, including my squid and my extra little mussels and clams that I had. And then grab my lid. So you want to bring this back to a simmer. Get it nice and hot. And then we're just going to turn it off and put a lid on it. All right. Remember that other than the squid, they were all cooked, but the squid cooks really quickly. So I'm just gonna, it's bubbling again now, so I'm just gonna turn it off, put my lid on, and I'm gonna let it just sit over here for a minute. All right, and then I'm gonna put in my my basil and my parsley and correct the seasoning. Okay, so final thing we have to do is just to decorate our cake. So for this, I'm going to put this on a plate. Now it's cool. It should be easier to move. If it's a little tricky, just gently slide it off like that. It shouldn't be too hard to get off. So what we're going to do, I just need my little, there it is. We're going to sprinkle confectioner's sugar on the top of this. All right, so a small strainer ideally, or a shaker. Put your confectioner's sugar in it first, and then just tap it all over the top of your cake. Evenly, all right? Like that. I probably used about 2 tablespoons, something like that. All right. Now, you don't have to do this. I've got some of the little tiny amarettini. You could even use little almonds or something, because there is almonds in the amaretti almond taste. So you could use almonds too. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my tiny little baby amarettini, and I'm using a little bit of apricot jam, just a little bit on the bottom like that. And I'm going to stick a couple of these on the top. You don't have to do this, but it looks kind of pretty. Oops, it's a bit much. Don't need that much. What have I got? I've got 4 more in here. 1. 2. You can use any jam. It's just the orange doesn't show. It won't bleed or anything into anything. So that's kind of. Another thing you can do, and I actually don't have one here. If you have a doily, paper doily, is lay the paper doily on your cake and then sprinkle the confection sugar over it. And you take it off and you've got the lovely pattern of the doily, which is kind of cute. All right, so that is our cake. All done. I'm going to put my, as I say, I'm going to put my stew in here. Oh, come on. Bit rushed in there. And parsley and my basil. And then my little toast. I'm going to just put around the sides like that. So I'm going to warm up my asparagus gently. The Parmesan cheese on top of that. Just be careful because, again, we have a fairly small amount. So you just want to make sure it doesn't catch or anything. If it's a little thick, take a tiny bit of water out of your pasta water. I've added about 2 tablespoons of water to it. Again, because we've got a small amount. I don't want it to catch. So I'm just thinning it out a little bit with, yeah, that tastes nice now. That's good. And then what we're going to do with the pasta, we're going to put the pasta in a bowl and then toss it with this. So it's going to be coated with it, and I'm going to put it in a serving bowl. And I think we've got 50 seconds left on the pasta. So that's good. Look at my strainer. Oh, it is. So this doesn't need to be that hot because it's going to go on the hot pasta. But again, I just thinned it out a bit because of the relatively small amount. That does tend to make a difference when we're making small amounts. All right. No, phone's beeping. All right. So drain your pasta. Pop it in a bowl. Oops, we've got a bit left in there. I didn't realize. It's stuck. A couple of bits stuck to the bottom. Come on, out you come. There we go. And then add your asparagus sauce to it. Mix it in. And you can add a bit of Parmesan cheese in with it if you want, or just on the top. It's up to you. So you've got, I've got this nice green sauce on there. And then I'm going to put it in a serving bowl and top it with my little pieces. Do I cook separately? Where the heck I put them? Oh, there they are. So, topped with my little bits of pasta and a bit more Parmesan. There we go. All right. So, we are all done.